This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 501 for March 19th of 2020, an unbelievably simple manufacturing breakthrough.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Oh, Gary, we're for outdoor, no brother.
Whoa, there you go. So you're in the studio, and I, of course, am working from home as so many people are, and so we're doing the show somewhat differently. But I like to start the show with something that happened on this day in history, and I couldn't find anything automotive, but it is Bruce Willis's 65th. So I think we give a shout out to Die Hard's magnificent star.
There you go. And yeah, we should let everybody know we're going to continue doing the show, even though we're doing it all remotely. The crew in different places, the guests in different places, but the show must go on.
Good thing indeed.
Hey, we got to let everybody know we've got Bob Gritzinger joining us for today's show as well from Ward's Intelligence. Hello, Bob.
How y'all doing, folks?
You look very comfortable there at home.
I'm relaxed. I've got the jazz hands going. Everything's good.
All right.
Hunkered down.
And we've got to let everybody know our special guest for today is Jeff Trumble from a company called Trumble Incorporated. And Jeff, it's a pleasure to have you on Autoline After Hours.
John, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So let's get into it. I mean, give us in a thumbnail, because we'll get into a lot of details, but very briefly, what is it that you've come up with? And that'll help explain why we invited you on the show.
Well, it's I love the title, an unbelievably simple manufacturing solution, but it is a bit misleading. What we've done is we've put together a very powerful and very intelligent software product. And the complexity is all embedded within the product itself. And you'll understand why in a minute. Our target user community are the people at the grassroots level on the factory floor. And it needed to be unbelievably simple, not because those people are simple. The people on the factory floor are amazing, innovative, intelligent, creative, the same as you, me, the same as anyone else on this planet. The complexity is embedded because the folks on the factory floor may not have formal education in statistics, formal education in data mining. So what we did is we created a product that protected our target user community, all of that bright human capital on the factory floor. And what we did is we protect them from having to do any statistics, any data mining skills. So the product doesn't require that from its user community. All of the monitoring, all of the statistics, all of the data mining is all done automatically. It's an artificial intelligence piece of software. It understands where people work, what operations they're responsible for, what shifts they work. It knows what products are running down the line. It knows what the specifications are in terms of both the equipment, cycle times, for example, and it also knows design specifications. With all of that knowledge baked into the product, as it scans the factory floor around the clock, 24/7, it looks for non-conformances. It ignores if everything's fine. So it's like finding a needle in the haystack. If everything is fine, no one hears from the system. If something is emerging as a threat, and that's the key, as it's emerging, the system notifies the person closest to that particular operation or station that a correction needs to be made. And when you put all these ingredients together, what you have is proactive control of your factory floor, not reactive. And there are many good strategies out there, but they're still reactive, and it has been for 100 years. Today's computing power, today's coding expertise, the industrial Internet of Things and then you mix that with the human capital, and what you have is preventive factory control, proactive process control, recognizing threats fast enough, communicating it early enough to the people on the floor that know that equipment best so that they can make the required adjustments. Hopefully, John, that makes sense.
Jeff, I know enough about MES and ERP and SPC to be dangerous. You guys claim that your system, none of the above. So tell me why it's not, a manufacturing execution system.
Well, the reason it's not is because there's a whole layer of business intelligence, inventory control, reordering, all kinds of systems, HR systems, all of that business intelligence. Those are good products. They're great. But there's very few products that target that factory floor itself, not middle management, not the professional community, although they benefit greatly. But our primary target, and what makes us different, is that we're able to get critical information about the process right to the factory floor itself, directly to the people who are responsible for those assets.
So how do they know that there's something gone wrong? I mean, what's the means by which they're alerted? I mean, is it, we all go into factories and we see the tubular light where it's red, yellow, and green, and if everything's good, the green light is showing. If things are going out of control, it's yellow. If it's bad, it's red. I mean, is that what you use?
Well, it's a great question, Gary. No, we take it to a new level. We take it to a much higher level of resolution. And just like the whole world is using smartphones, the whole world is accustomed to text messaging. It's that exact media that we used to deliver a real-time feed to the people on the factory floor. So any wireless device, smartphone, which by the way, we provide, and it is new, it is a step up. We like to say that we're opening the factory workforce to a new opportunity, an opportunity to participate in the business, an opportunity to be transformed in a way into digital technicians, which we feel is the appropriate role for factory workers as we go here into the future. And what makes this possible is the industrial Internet of Things, high-speed computing, and a lot of manufacturing experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jeff, let me recap a little bit. My understanding is, and I know I called it a very simple breakthrough, and it's more than that, but hey, we need a good headline here. So what you've done, if you've developed this artificial intelligence program that piggybacks onto a quality assurance measuring system that's already in place, you do your analysis of all the machinery in the plant, real time, 24/7, or whenever the plant's open. If there's something that's starting to drift out of statistical control, you ping the operator, tell them there's a problem, tell them exactly which machine they have to go to and exactly how they have to adjust it. I mean, is that essentially?
That is how it works. And you brought something up that's very important. Manufacturing over the decades, past decades, have invested billions of dollars in the industry to network their equipment, to have massive amounts of data collected. But the challenge has always been what matters, what 2, 3, 4% of all that data do people need to know about right now to prevent a loss? That's been the challenge. And that's what we sent out to conquer and to develop a technology that's able to provide that. So what you pointed out, John, is correct. All those previous investments, the more connected a factory is, if money's already been spent to network the equipment, if there's data that's being collected and is currently stored in databases, we simply integrate. You could think of it as a bolt-on or an integration into that network and into those available databases and leverage that previous investment, which now its value multiplies. We like to call it a force multiplier, because instead of sitting in databases waiting for professionals to mine it out after a loss occurs, our system is continuously monitoring that data as it's being written to the database. then the system determines whether or not a threat is emerging using very time-tested standard statistical rules and strategies. And when a threat is emerging before there's any non-conformances, or if any machine parameter is emerging as a threat, that's when the system communicates through a real-time feed to the right stakeholder on the factory floor so the correction can be made prior to the loss. This is the breakthrough. And from a user perspective, it is unbelievably simple.
So, Jeff,
that's a good thing.
Let me ask you about the granularity of this thing. So, this will be sort of a geeky example, but let's say we're face milling an engine block, and one of the tools is beginning to wear, one of the tools is beginning to go bad. Are you able to detect that and alert the operator that there's something wrong at that particular spindle?
Yes, that's a great question, and it's a great example. The system is intelligent enough to see that. So to add on to what your question is, Gary, there's something that all manufacturers are familiar with, and that's block tool change. And the problem with that is you can end up changing out expensive tooling, ceramic or carbide tooling, too early or too late because it's on a schedule. Every 25,000 parts, every 50,000 parts. Wouldn't it be better to change out the tools as needed? So instead of counting cycles, keep an eye on the variability that's being generated from each of those cuts that are being made. And as the data itself says that the tool is wearing and it's trending towards either an upper or a lower specification, now it's time to change that tool. You may get 10,000 extra cycles, 15,000 extra cycles, or something may go wrong and it's trending very early or prematurely. So to move from a block static tool change to changing tools only when needed is in itself a breakthrough and a huge money saver.
Let me, you took this down to a granular level. Let me take it way back to, having worked in auto plants back long before there was Industry 1.0, before there were computers, I can recall when, the whole line would shut down because of an engineering problem. And it took a day to get the engineers there to mill around and figure out what they needed to fix. So now we're into this kind of a system. Do you have the employees on board? How do you get them on board? And as well as those engineers who used to mill around?
That's a great question. Now, I was one of those operators on the factory floor, spending my early career at Ford Motor Company, 10 years as a blue-collar union worker. Mm-hmm. Then I was educated by Ford Motor, was promoted into management, quality, into engineering, really experiencing the full gamut. So I really did experience what it's like to be an operator and to be ignored and to not be valued properly. And I know what it feels like to be underutilized. But then as I went through the ranks and as Ford continued to promote me, then I could also see that perspective from the management side. The real power is the collaboration between the management ranks, engineering and professional ranks, and the people on the floor that are tasked with keeping that equipment running day after day, as much uptime as possible, quality as good as possible. Those people on the factory floor, we consider the heroes. And all you professionals, don't be offended by that. You guys are absolutely necessary also. But those people on the factory floor are really going to make or break the profitability of that throughput. It really comes down to that. So how important is it to have a technology that serves them on the factory floor? And then what is the benefit to the management ranks and to the companies and to Wall Street? When you mobilize all that human capital on the factory floor, quality improves, throughput improves, problems are mitigated, problems are literally prevented because of the speed at which the analytic takes place and the aggressive real-time communication to the factory floor. Hopefully that makes sense because it is very powerful.
Profit sharing goes up.
Profit sharing definitely goes up because there are more profits.
Yeah.
Jeff, I was going to say, your system, does it work for a full factory or a department level or a machine level? I mean, how does this integrate within an existing operation?
Thank you for asking that because it is a very important question. It is designed and architected for a wall-to-wall billion-dollar annual revenue factory. From green end, from raw material in green end through machining, sub-assembly, full assembly to final commodity to shipment out the door. Although I want to make it clear, we don't do any scheduling or any inventory control. That's the role of ERP, MES, those systems we were talking about earlier. So that being said, it's also fully scalable. We can go down all the way to connecting just a handful of equipment or one line, for example, or one commodity within a factory. So it's very scalable, but the power is in the interactive analytics that are possible when all of the assets are being monitored in real time, from green end through the machining process and all those gauging processes, including sideline and CMM room, by the way, into sub-assembly, through final assembly, when the statistics can see all the data and the analytic can cover the whole manufacturing value stream. Now you have some power. Now you can determine data-driven, fact-based root causes because it's all coming from the real facts on the factory floor. So we're really designed to be fully integrated wall-to-wall, but it's also scalable down to a single cell, for example, or a small line, because our ambition, whether it's a full, a huge, 500 station plant, or it's a smaller facility, our objective is to serve that community right where they are in terms of the maturity level, and then to grow with those companies to be one of their long-term strategic partners. That's really our ambition.
Hey, Jeff, we're starting to get questions in from the audience, and I want to emphasize that to anybody in the audience. In the chat room, you can submit questions to Jeff Trumble, and for later on into the show for me, Gary, and Bob. You can send us an email too. Send it to viewermail@autoline.tv. But let's get to one of the first ones that came in. Jim Bianchi. Hello out there, Jim. Good to hear from you. He wants to know who's using the software now and what kind of results are they seeing. And let me just preface it, preface that by saying, before we invited Jeff on the show, I had to check out this company. So I was able to talk with the plant manager at the Chrysler engine plant in Trenton, Michigan. This guy raved about the thing. So anyway, Jeff, I'm just setting that up for you to take it from there. Who else is using it, or what kind of results are they seeing?
We had good results at the Ford Cleveland engine plant. Okay, on their final assembly line, we've had very good results at FCA on their Ferrari block line.
Explain the Ferrari block line too. A lot of people don't know that.
Well, this is a product that Chrysler was contracted to make and ship to Italy. And there were some issues that they were experiencing, and it resulted in some very expensive monthly expediting charges through air freight. And, most factories know what that's like to face these challenging problems. So they asked us to get involved, and within 60 days, they were out of air freighting, had the resolution to determine where those bottlenecks were, and able to move their first time yield up to really what that excellent process is capable of, which is upper 90s in first time yield. So
I know that air freighting is hugely expensive. They must have paid for your program in no time.
Well, that's a fact. That is a fact. And we have Well, let me share with another OEM for the crank machining, which is notoriously difficult to machine. At this particular facility, going from the worst performing line in the division to the best performing line in the division. That's something we're very proud of, and it does demonstrate what's possible through this type of technology and this type of real-time analytic. If you think about it, it's not rocket science. You can't manage what you can't see. And by making the process visible at a very high resolution, then people will respond to the issues. But if they don't see the issues to begin with, then there's no opportunity, especially to prevent anything. So it's all about real-time monitoring, early detection, aggressive communication to the floor, all balled up in a fully automated manufacturing strategy. And by the way, it's the software product's the enabling tool called Reveal, but the solution we call plant floor intelligence. And it is exactly that. It enables proactive control through real-time analytics. The results are real and the impact is powerful.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I wanted you to talk about the Ferrari block because most people are not aware that the blocks for Ferraris are machined in Trenton, Michigan.
Well, yes, and it really is a testimony to Chrysler's capabilities there. You know, as everyone knows, Fiat Chrysler. So they won that work and do a fantastic job. We felt very excited, very, very honored that they would consider our technology as a solution. And through a collaborative effort with FCA and the folks on that Ferrari block line, the results were very dramatic and very good.
Hey, we got another question here from Evan Johnson. I'll just boil it down to the very end here. He says, can you retrofit this to older equipment and plants?
That's a great question because I think, as everybody knows, there are no standards out there. It's all over the map, controllers, brands, models, types. The answer is yes, we take on that burden. We accept that. That is our responsibility to figure out a solution depending on the models of your equipment, the controllers that you're using, the brands. Once we gather that information, and we do that, by the way, through an assessment that's no charge to the client, we need that information so that we can go back, we do our homework, and we come back proposing a solution that will integrate regardless of maturity level or the equipment that is running there. Now let me just caution, there are plants where the equipment is so outdated that it just is not feasible. And quite frankly, a lot of money needs to be spent modernizing and updating some factories because the equipment is literally that old. But we've gone a long way to retrofit and meet the needs of the plant regardless of their maturity level. So if you're PLC driven, at least we can help for sure.
Do you need a communications protocol being in place like MT Connect or something like that?
You know, you mentioned MT Connect. That's definitely a good solution for CNC machines that are not connected. There are many, many different technologies out there, and we work with local partners, suppliers of the latest in adapters, sensors, always being mindful that these solutions require innovation, they require creativity because of what we're talking about. Factories don't order standard stuff. They're all over the place, and they're all ages, and they're all different brands and models of controllers, networks. We're willing to do an assessment and really work hard and do our best at proposing a solution that works for your plant. It's not what we think you need. It's definitely learning the needs of the facility. And this is for any supplier of any solution. The focus is on them, not what we think they need. So we're very collaborative in understanding their issues and proposing a solution that makes sense.
So let me ask you something that may be simple, but maybe very hard. Over the years, when I've talked to companies that do, adaptive control, which this sounds a little bit like, just a little bit like. There's always this case whereby you need to have, let's call it the golden part. The system needs to know what is correct. So how is it that your system learns what is correct? Because if it doesn't know what's correct, it's not going to know if something's drifting.
Well, you bring up a great challenge to software providers in these days of tech solutions. We don't use probabilities. We don't make any assumptions. We use real data. So we do that by preloading the system with design specifications from our clients. So whatever those design specifications are and those tolerances, we lock all of our analytic to always show and reveal where the performance is relative to those design specifications. So we're very, very real-time, very fact-based and data-driven, always relative to the design specs. So we don't use probabilities to define what is normal. We don't make speculations or assumptions. Those are very risky. And I know there's a lot of companies out there that are applying that technology, and I do believe it has promise. But to us, to work with real data, exactly the story that the equipment is telling us on the factory floor, the exact story that the gauges are telling us, as those trends are occurring, there are no probabilities involved. It's either drifting and threatening, or it's not. So we take really the opposite approach by getting as close to clock time as possible, trend the data as it's being written to the database, plot those trends, and then notify the right stakeholder to make the correction when the data is telling the story, not a probability.
So basically you integrate with CATIA or Siemens or PTC or someone like that and load the design information into your system, and that is used to make the determinations of when there's drift?
Yes, there are many ways to load the design specifications and information. Sometimes it's automated. Sometimes it has to be manually entered into the system depending on the client and the company. But to us, the design specifications, that is the Bible. That is really what determines how well that manufacturing value stream is performing. So again, no assumptions, no probabilities, just real-time facts, grabbing those trends as they're occurring in the manufacturing value stream, wherever they are, and then notifying the right stakeholder, whether it's a team leader on the floor, whether it's a process engineer or a quality engineer or a maintenance supervisor. The whole key is getting information fast enough to the plant floor personnel that they can actually correct the situation before they lose any product or have resulting downtime. Mm-hmm. So it's all about leveraging all of today's technologies in order to do what we do very quickly, giving the people who are the real heroes time to make the correction. So our whole thing, people, they're not created to serve technology. Technology is created to serve people. So there may be a lights out factory of the future somewhere at this point in time and out there in the future. But at this point in time, we believe people are the real hero. And we've put together a technology that analyzes, calculates, makes decisions, and reaches people so that they can put their expertise to work because they live with that equipment 245 plus days a year on the factory floor.
Hey, Jeff, we got a couple of quick questions and we'll wrap up the segment. Barry Rector wants to know, is worker safety part of this design?
You know, safety is always first and foremost. There's no question about it. It's always a consideration. So as real-time feeds come into the factory floor, there have to be rules. For example, when we send information to devices, the devices have to be what we call locked down, so that there's no surfing the web. There are no publicly trafficked text messaging back and forth, no games, anything that can be distracting. When people take their eyes off the factory floor, there's risk involved in that. So we've worked very hard at providing a mobile application and making sure the devices that are used for the people that spend all their time on the factory floor are not dangerous, and they're not lending themselves to an unsafe type environment. So we've restricted it to only communicate with our server so that the information is direct, specific, and very minimal in terms of time.
You've answered one of my questions too, is how do you make sure it's not hacked? And it sounds like you've got a system in place.
Well, cybersecurity is always a concern. From our cloud architecture, we use standard secure socket layer encryption to and from the facility. We have all of the firewalls that are required, and we strive to meet the criteria of the industry, the ISO criteria for moving data from one location to another. Yeah. Sometimes companies are not willing to risk the public internet. In that case, the architecture is built on site within the corporate firewall, within their intranet. So the hardware then has to be installed at that particular facility. For those companies that are open to cloud architecture, it is more economical, and it really is very secure. I think it's a coin toss whether it's more secure to be on-prem or actually doing the analytic from the cloud. The security strategies are very robust.
Right, but Joe production worker isn't bringing his iPhone in to get the messages. That's part of the key. So yeah.
Bob, that's exactly right. It would be a lot easier for us, to be honest with you, if folks could use their personal devices, but the world doesn't work that way. It's proprietary data. It's owned by our clients and those manufacturers. So the devices have to be captured. They have to be corporately approved, and all of the data needs to be kept locked up and safe. It cannot be exchanged through people's personal smartphones and devices. These are all things, great questions, and things that have to be overcome as we get into the market and as we deploy and as we grow and as companies are getting into real-time digital data management. These are all things that need to happen. These are great questions.
Yeah, we've actually got other questions from the audience. I think you've answered them in the course of the conversation here, but Chuck Grenchey, Big Barney, Carter Harvey, NC. Actually, NC wanted to know if we can see the interface, but you don't have that ready. We're not in the studio. Well, I'm in the studio, but you guys are all remote there.
No, but we would certainly, obviously, we're willing to share that information with anyone interested. A note about the interface. There's a real problem today, and it's information overload. So it is not that's a serious form of waste. So we don't have a general dashboard that everyone logs into. The interface is role-based and personalized. So if a team leader on the floor who's responsible for 10 stations, what they see in their dashboard and what they deal with are those 10 stations, and that's it, because that's what they have influence over and what they can control. If a plant manager or quality manager has the entire plant, they own all of the operations, then his or her dashboard is equipped to see the entire value stream. But it's all role-based, and that's to prevent waste in terms of too much information. So the virtual, we like to call it a virtual toolbox, and we welcome anyone out there who wants to explore it to let us know, and we're happy to open it up to you.
That's great. Jeff, I got to thank you for coming on the show. This is fascinating. Like I said, I did my due diligence. I talked to a number of manufacturing people. They were really impressed with your system. I think this is really going to catch on in the industry. We'll have to have you back at some time to give us an update too.
Well, thank you very much. We have been endorsed by great people in the industry. Ron Harbour is one who's very impressed with our technology, and we really appreciate his support. But we're ready to take a look at your manufacturing facilities.
Real good. I'm sure you're going to get a call after the show. But anyway, Jeff Trumble, thanks so much for coming on Autoline After Hours. It's been great having you.
John, Gary, Bob, thank you very much. It really was a pleasure to be on the show. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Everybody else sit tight. We're going to be back in a minute. We got a lot more things to talk about of what's going on in the automotive industry. But first, a shout out to our good sponsor, Bridgestone. All right, we're back. We're going to talk all things automotive, although I should ask Dr. Data, is there a number?
Okay, there's a number, but it's going to be a audio test. So this one's very easy. So I was looking at sales numbers for 2019, and there was a car company that had a 43% increase in sales in 2019. Okay, now 43% increase in sales, and it sold a whopping 8,205 vehicles. What car company was it?
Ooh.
Aston Martin.
No, they don't even come close to that. I know
That was
Ferrari.
I can hope, right?
Ferrari's around 10,000, so I know it's not Ferrari, but it's got to be somebody like that. So I would guess Lamborghini.
And you are right.
Wow.
You know, that Urus, their first sport ute, that's gets all the credit for their big increase in sales, right?
Yeah, so basically they have three vehicles. They have the Urus, the Aventador, and the Huracan. And the Urus, okay, now remember that the total number is 8,205. The Urus alone is 4,962 units. So, I mean, it's like the others. Why do they bother? It's just like turn the capacity over to the SUV and just make more.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
Okay, Gary. Yeah, what else is on the menu there?
Well,
to talk
so
about?
I was going to say, for our viewers who are wondering, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the auto industry that's not good news right now, and we all know that. And I think that it would behoove us to talk about things that are more positive than plant closings and things going wrong and dismal sales and so on. So it's not that we don't know what's happening. We just choose not to talk about that. One of the things that I thought was rather fascinating was that, we've talked about this on the show, that the domestic automakers are giving up on cars. Okay. They're not going down that road, as it were. And yet their competitors, the Asian competitors, largely have been really focused on continuing to do cars and are doing fairly well by that. And so this week we saw that Hyundai announced the 2021 Elantra, and man, they are really in this game quite a bit. And it was there's a quote from Jose Munoz, who runs Hyundai North America, said, quote, "While some manufacturers no longer see the value in the car side of the business, we're doubling down by offering an all-new model with both gas and hybrid powertrains. We've sold more than 3.4 million Elantras here in the U.S. and more than 13.8 million worldwide. And the new captivating look is going to bring excitement to a whole new generation of buyers. Then once inside, they're going to love all the progressive features." And, those numbers are pretty impressive, that they're selling 13.8 million around the world. So what do you guys make of this? I mean, is this a good strategy for these companies to continue to produce compact cars?
Got to get people in the door, and there are buyers who just cannot make the leap financially to even the least expensive crossover, I think. So, a good compact small car is often the price of entry. And a lot of people are giving it up too. So go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And look, even though sales of passenger cars have cratered in the last 6, 7, 8 years, they still represent almost 25% of the market. So 1 out of 4 vehicles is still going to be a passenger car. And so, yeah, there's a strategy to keep going with it. I'd point out GM has not completely given up on passenger cars. Ford's going to keep a few of them. FCA, no, they're out of it, at least in the U.S. market. Right. But that Elantra, I can't wait to see that thing in the steel, so to speak, because the styling, really impressive. What do they announce? Over 50 miles per gallon is what they expect out of the hybrid version of the Elantra. More power to Hyundai, man. They're taking, lemons and making lemonade out of it. I don't mean lemons in the sense of cars, but you know what I mean in terms of the pass car segment. They're not giving up on it.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, that and the red that was shown as we were looking at this isn't even its best color. You go out to their website and look at the silver images. My God, the car is gorgeous. Look at the styling to that rear end. It's fantastic. But you mentioned technology. You get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto standard in this vehicle, and with a step up to nav, you get some really great voice recognition. This natural voice that people who might find themselves moving down out of something premium and larger in the coming months, they may find those kind of features attractive.
Well, I was going to say, talking about the styling. I mean, one of the issues, it seems to me, is that over the years, some manufacturers have said, compact cars, we really don't make that much money off of them, and therefore, let's not make the dies. Going back to the previous conversation, let's not make the manufacturing too complicated in terms of doing these body panels. Let's just make these nice, smooth, rounded shapes, and quickly weld them together. And it's astonishing if you look at the way they've creased that metal. I mean, that is a huge challenge, and that's not a trivial expense to do that. And it almost strikes me that maybe one of the reasons we've seen a decline in car sales is because the auto manufacturers haven't put that much emphasis, especially in the compact category, on doing really appealing, attractive, compelling designs. And I mean, if we look at our now always favorite topic of Tesla, I mean, I think we forget the fact that basically Tesla's been selling cars and knocking it out of the park in terms of sales. And again, it's an appealing design that people are looking for. And I think that this is what Hyundai is focusing on. I got to give them a tremendous amount of credit for that.
Completely agree. Yeah, they're doing a terrific job of styling, and that's a great point, Gary. The finesse job they had to do on those dies to get the creases and how they fade out, come in stronger and fade out again. That's the kind of detail work that normally does not go into entry-level cars.
Right. And they've done that. And, you mentioned the hybrid. I mean, so we saw that Toyota with the Corolla decided, we have to make that somewhat more appealing. So let's put a hybrid powertrain into that. I think we're going to begin to see more and more even compact vehicles have hybrid powertrains going forward.
Well, look, they have to. There's no choice. Even in the U.S. market, especially in Europe, even in China, you got to electrify. There's no way that you're going to be able to meet these standards, emission standards, fuel economy standards, EV mandates, ultimately, without having electrification in your lineup. What's Honda saying? I think they expect half of all their sales in 2030 to be electrified. And they're not talking battery electric. They're talking hybrids.
Mm-hmm. Bob, you were mentioning the technology that they're bringing to bear on that. And although this doesn't have the smart POC of its big brother, the Sonata, it does have a very interesting digital key capability where you can use your smartphone to open the doors. Again, we're talking about a compact car. I mean, you could see Cadillac saying, "Oh, we have something like this." I mean, and this is Hyundai with the Elantra, for goodness sakes. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a step up for sure, and I think we'd all agree. It seems like every Hyundai that you get into seems to be the next step up. The kind of stuff that they've just shown us in the past year. What the Palisade, it's impressive.
Yeah, look, so far this year, or at least through February, Hyundai and Kia sales are some of the biggest increasers in the entire marketplace because of all the things that we're talking about here.
Right.
Yeah, and speaking of which, so I've gone from rhapsodizing about compact cars. So this week in Europe, Kia unveiled the 4th generation Sorento, which again, from a styling point of view, I mean, it is remarkable to me what these guys are doing in that space. I mean, I think there's considerable agreement that the Kia Telluride, which is the big brother of this Sorento, had just a knockout styling. This, I think, is taking it to a whole new level. And again, these guys were sort of late to the party in terms of SUVs, and now they're just, leading the pack in terms of execution on these. John, you and I are jurors for the North American Car, Truck, and Utility of the Year, and the Telluride won. And it's interesting that one of the things that it won over was a Lincoln. Okay, I mean, so here's Kia beating a Lincoln. I mean, it's just incredible.
Really is. But look what Hyundai's gone out and done. It's hired some of the best designers in the world to come to Korea and work there. They've hired some of the best development engineers out of Europe to go there, and they're going right for the throat. I mean, they're putting in Audi levels of finesse and styling and interior developments. They're putting in BMW and other levels of technology into their cars, and they're doing it really quickly. Gary, you mentioned how you can unlock the car with your phone, and on the Sonata, you can pull it in and out of parking spots, as you were talking about the smart car parking. But no other automaker at all, none of them, not a mass manufacturer, is coming out with that level of technology as quickly as Hyundai Kia Group is.
So why do you think they can do it and the others can't? Or is it not that they can't, it's just that they don't?
Boy, I don't know. We work with, a lot of UX designers when we're working on our 10 best user experience evaluations. And the Hyundai people are just locked in. They have a whole team. They're really working at it. And I'm just not sure anybody, maybe other than, FCA does a nice job with things like the Ram. That's an impressive UX. Mercedes, but those are, that's way more expensive than what you're typically buying in a Hyundai or Kia.
Well, look, the key is going to be in the finances. Can Hyundai make good money at this? If you look at the past decade, wow, their profitability just really cratered. So now we're going to have to see, can they do all this stuff and make decent margins? And we got a question in here as what we were talking about. Barry Rector says, hey, if the foreign manufacturers are going hybrid and doing well, why can't the Detroit 3 succeed with them? And what I would point out, Barry, is there's really only 3 manufacturers up to now who have taken hybrid seriously. Number one is Toyota, which dominates the hybrid segment, no matter where in the world that you look at least in the US. Ford is number 2 to Toyota, and then Honda's number 3. Those are the 3 companies that have taken it seriously. Now Hyundai, Kia, they're trying to get in on that. Let's see how they do. So far, their hybrid sales have not been that great. But, now we're seeing the cool new models that we've been just talking about coming out with hybrid options. Maybe Hyundai, Kia are really going to start to turn up the wick when it comes to hybrids.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, the strategy that General Motors is taking is saying, you know what, when you get right down to it, the Volt, despite the fact that they like to call it an extended range electric vehicle, it was a hybrid. I mean, let's call it
plug-in hybrid.
Right. Yeah, different kind of hybrid, but a hybrid.
It was a hybrid. It wasn't an electric vehicle. It was a hybrid. Yeah. It was an electrified vehicle. But they've basically said, no, that is not what we're going to do. We're going to go full on, full bore electric.
Right.
And John, you mentioned Ford being number 2, and if you think about it, I mean, Ford's hybrids are pretty much invisible. Okay, I mean, you didn't even know they were out there. I mean, and so everyone knows Toyota for the Prius because the Prius is a thing unto itself, right? And you'd identify that and go, oh, that's a hybrid, But Toyota also has, I mean, virtually every single one of their vehicles, or even the Lexus lineup, all have hybrid versions. And again, those are stealth. I remember when John, when you and I were doing the introduction of the current generation Camry with a hybrid, and we were knocked out at how wonderful that car was. Yet, I think that if you were to say, ask someone, is there a Camry hybrid? They'd say, what? It doesn't exist. What does FCA have? Yeah. Bob, do you have any idea? I mean,
48 volt on Wranglers and Rams,
which is basically start-stop system.
And a little assist.
It's assist. Yeah. Isn't there like 50 foot-pounds of torque on the e-torque?
There's some assistance there, but that's their play right now. But you mentioned Ford in terms of being sort of a hidden hybrid, and that's going forward seems to be their strategy. The new Escape hybrid, I don't even think it's badged hybrid. So they're taking that strategy to just make it kind of part of the car.
Right. Yeah. Well, to be fair to FCA, the Pacifica hybrid.
There you go. Yeah. I'll plug it too. Yeah. Hey, I know we got some more topics to get into. We got to take another quick commercial break here and give a shout out to our good friends at Borg Warner.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what Borg Warner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry. We create innovative mobility technologies that reduce energy consumption and emissions while improving performance. Our proven track record has made us an industry leader in forward-looking propulsion solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles.
All right, we're back talking all things automotive. And Gary, here I got a question for you that comes in from Tim Watson, who's watching. GM and Ford are talking about making masks and respirators, ventilators. What do you think? Are they going to be able to do this?
I have every confidence in the world they're going to be able to do this. If those guys can't do it, I don't know who on earth can. I mean, okay, is it going to be difficult to retool? Yes. Do they have capacity? Yes. I think and John, you're quite familiar with the World War II transition that the Detroit automakers made in terms of making airplanes in Willow Run and making armaments in downtown Detroit, and the Bud Company and Ford and all of these companies just completely transformed what they were doing and started making munitions for the war effort. And it strikes me that one of the differences that, there are advanced technologies now. Think about this in terms of when we had the Joe DeSimone from Carbon 3D came on, okay? They didn't have that 75 years ago. We have that stuff now. We can now print tooling and do it in a very quick, efficient, fast manner. And so I just hope that they do. I mean, I hope that they get into this in a big way and help everyone out. I mean, we see that in China, BYD, which is an auto manufacturer, has been making masks and hand sanitizer. And there is know-how and knowledge that exists in the auto industry that deals with things like fluids, that deals with things like fabrics, that deals with complicated mechanical structures like respirators. So yeah, I'm confident it's going to happen, and I hope it happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see it happen. Now, I don't think they're going to be retooling plants to do this. They're not going to be, taking an assembly plant, an engine plant, or converting it to make that. But they've got closed plants that closed way before this coronavirus thing that they
Right.
could have open floor space in. And come on, look, all you need is a big empty warehouse to start doing this. What I'd love to see them do is turn this over to the skilled tradespeople, to the techs that they have, the people that know how to make anything, the people that, for all practical purposes, have their own machine shops in their garage or their basement. I mean, give it to them. All they need are the specs, the materials, the equipment, and some area to do it.
Mhm.
Get out of their way. And guess what? You watch, they'll volunteer to do it. They're not going to have to be told. And so you start out in low volume, you start learning how to do it, you start ramping up. But the time for action is now. Sitting around planning how to do it isn't the way to do it. I remember one of these guys telling me a long time ago, I was helping him build a deck on his house. And I say, well, we ought to figure out how we're going to do it. And he goes, man, let's just build it. We'll figure it out later. Those are the kind of people that you need on this right now.
People in the plants, in skilled trades used to call little side projects government jobs. Well, this is a government job.
Real good.
This is a government job, no question.
All right, this is almost going to be the full hybrid show. So we're going to BMW has announced the end of the i8, and I put it to you, will anyone notice? And the reason I say that is, so I looked at the sales numbers in both the United States and Europe for the history of the vehicle. Okay, so the vehicle was available in Europe since 2013. And between 2013 and 2019 in Europe, the total sales for the BMW i8 were 8,318 vehicles. Okay. It was available in the United States from 2014 to 2019. I'm still out there now.
Correct.
Okay. So that's a total of 6,776. Now, if you combine the total number of i8s sold over that period of time, you come up with a grand total of 15,094 vehicles. And I further discovered that you could park all but 94 of them in the parking lot of Mall of America.
Right. No, it was a sales disaster, but it was a beautiful car.
It's a gorgeous car.
Gorgeous car. I had one to test drive. Everybody in my family came out of the woodwork. Oh, please take me for a ride in that car. Everybody loved it. But I got to tell you, here's why it didn't sell, in my opinion. It had very high door sills and a very low seating position. Getting in and out of that thing was a pain in the neck, even if you're a fairly lithe person. And the other thing, because it was a hybrid, really, that 3-cylinder engine would come on at full revs at totally unexpected times. And it really detracted from the driving pleasure of the car. But it's just astonishing to me that something that looks so good was essentially sales proof. And, 20 years from now, we're going to see it at some concours d'elegance and go, oh my God, why did they ever stop making that thing? It's gorgeous.
So John, you don't think that there might have been a slight problem that the cheap one started at $147,500?
Well, look,
I know that's Bob's area, but
to John's point, an E-Rev system works in a Volt with a V, but in $140,000 car, it can't operate like that. It can't sound like that.
And it wasn't very quick.
Yeah.
I mean, here's this drop-dead gorgeous sports car that wasn't very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're saving the planet when you drove it, though, John. I mean,
and BMW is moving on to saving the planet with the vehicles that will follow this. They need to put that money into, other electric models, iX3, i4, and there will be a follow-up to this hopefully something, 5 years out based on that next concept.
Yeah, maybe.
But
without rolling doors, without the scissor doors.
Yeah.
But John, you reported on Daily today that isn't there be an electric 7 Series?
That's what they're talking about. They released their financial earnings today. revenue strong and all that, but earnings going down the tubes. And this is before the coronavirus. But yeah, they said that there's going to be an all electric version of the 7 Series when the next generation comes out. But Joey's cleaning lady, I love that handle, just wrote in, and this comes back to our i8 and really i3 discussion. He said, didn't BMW sell all their carbon facilities in Washington? Remember when
that was SGL.
Yeah, and remember they were going to make all their future cars out of carbon fiber, and they bragged about how in front of all the industry they were because BMW was making its own carbon fiber, not buying it from suppliers. And boy, i3 and i8 failed class experiments. It didn't work.
Yeah, I don't have any idea what they were thinking there. So,
okay, Gary, you got another topic, or
that is
seeing Joey's cleaning lady though up on the screen. I've always wondered.
Nope, that's all I've got for this week, John.
Okay, well, real good. We're going to wrap this show up. Want to thank everybody who has tuned in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Bob Gritzinger, great having you here.
Good to be here.
Or having you there.
Yeah, or having you there. That's right.
There.
This actually works pretty good. Good conversation, even though none of us are sitting in the same room. We're in totally different locations.
You get a little crosstalk because you're trying to gauge whether somebody's going to speak, and you get a little better handle on that when you're live sitting across from someone. But this works.
Yeah.
Well,
well, good, Gary. We'll do it again next week.
Absolutely, John.
Gary, if the coronavirus keeps up, though, I expect to see you in the lab coat. We need a doctor on this program.
Yeah, okay.
We're good. Okay, everyone. Thanks again.
All right.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion. And by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.